What you're about to hear is not the sanitized version of war found in textbooks. According to declassified field reports and first-hand sniper debriefings, some of the most terrifying moments American soldiers experienced in Southeast Asia had nothing to do with enemy fire. They came from the ground beneath them, from the branches above, from the silence that moved. Military records show that during U.S. operations in the dense jungles of Southeast Asia, American snipers were trained to fear the unseen enemy. What those manuals rarely emphasized was that the jungle itself was alive and hostile. It breathed. It hunted. And it punished mistakes without mercy. For a sniper, remaining motionless was survival. Hours. Sometimes days. No movement. No sound. No reaction. But the jungle did not respect discipline. Venomous snakes slithered through leaf litter without warning. Giant centipedes crawled beneath rotting logs and into fabric. Ants, spiders, leeches, and creatures still unnamed by science shared the same ground chosen for observation posts. This was not incidental danger. It was constant. And it was intimate. Veterans later described the psychological weight as suffocating. You could hear insects chewing through the night. Feel something crawl across your skin. Sense movement inches from your face and still be unable to move. Because movement meant death from a rifle round. But stillness could mean poison slowly entering your bloodstream. Pay close attention to this reality. This is the side of jungle warfare few are willing to discuss. Snipers were selected for their patience, their control, their ability to suppress instinct. But the human nervous system was never designed to ignore the primal signals screaming inside the brain when something venomous brushes your leg. Training taught them to dominate fear of the enemy. It did not prepare them to negotiate with nature itself. Field notes recovered from reconnaissance units mention men remaining frozen as snakes coiled beside them for hours. Reports describe observation missions aborted not because of enemy presence, but because a single bite would have been fatal and extraction impossible. In the jungle, there were no medics. No immediate evacuation. No second chances. The environment exploited the very tactics snipers relied on. Camouflage meant blending into foliage, the same camouflage used by predators. Stillness invited creatures seeking warmth. Sweat attracted insects that bit, burrowed, and infected. Every breath felt loud. Every heartbeat felt exposed. And the longer a sniper stayed in position, the greater the risk became not of being seen, but of being touched. This created a unique psychological pressure. A slow-burning dread. Veterans later said the fear didn't spike like combat. It accumulated. Minute by minute. Hour by hour. Until the mind was fighting two wars at once, one against discipline, and one against survival instinct. Because in that moment, flinching was fatal. But enduring could be worse. As the war progressed, commanders began to understand that the jungle itself was shaping outcomes. Missions failed. Men broke silence. Positions were abandoned not because of the enemy, but because the ecosystem made continued immobility impossible. And for snipers, whose entire doctrine depended on becoming part of the terrain, the jungle was not a backdrop. It was an adversary. In the next part, we'll examine the first and most feared presence these men encountered, a creature so silent, so perfectly adapted to the forest floor, that many veterans still refuse to name it aloud. Silent. Sudden. Fatal. What made the jungle truly terrifying was not what moved loudly, but what didn't move at all. According to after-action reports and sniper testimonies, the most feared threat was something the men rarely saw until it was too late. Not enemy scouts. Not tripwires. But venom, perfectly still, coiled beneath leaves in shadow. Pit vipers. Cobras. Krites. These snakes were not intruders in the sniper's environment, they were masters of it. Their coloration matched the forest floor with terrifying precision. Brown, green, broken patterns identical to dead leaves and damp earth. When a sniper crawled into position, slowly inching forward over hours, there was no way to know if the ground ahead was empty or alive. Field manuals warned soldiers to probe ahead. In reality, probing was impossible for snipers already in final observation posture. Any extra movement risked detection. So they froze. And hoped. Veterans described moments where they felt pressure against their thigh. Or warmth. Or a subtle shift beneath their chest. Only later realizing they were lying inches from a coiled snake, disturbed but not yet striking. That knowledge alone could break a man. Because striking distance was measured in inches. Reaction time in milliseconds. And once bitten, there was almost nothing that could be done. Antivenom was rarely carried on long-range reconnaissance missions. Evacuation could take hours. Sometimes days. And venom didn't wait. Medical logs show that even non-lethal bites could end careers. Necrosis. Nerve damage. Infection. But lethal envenomation in the deep jungle was a death sentence signed in silence. Snipers learned quickly: you do not scream. You do not swat. You do not flinch. A sudden movement could trigger a reflex strike. A suppressed scream could betray your position. Even rolling away was impossible. So men stayed still. Muscles locked. Breath shallow. Heart pounding so hard they were sure the snake could feel it. One Marine sniper later recounted lying prone for nearly 6 hours while a venomous snake rested partially across his boot. He felt it shift. Felt scales drag. And did nothing. Because he knew that survival depended on being less noticeable than prey. This was the psychological breaking point. Not fear, but submission. You submitted to the jungle. You submitted to the animal. You surrendered control. Combat psychology studies later noted that these moments caused long-term stress responses comparable to close-quarters combat. The helplessness. The awareness of mortality without action. The knowledge that discipline, not courage, was the only shield. And sometimes, discipline failed. There are recorded incidents of snipers abandoning positions after detecting snakes too close for safety. Missions were compromised. Shots were never taken. Targets walked free because a man chose life over orders. Commanders rarely punished these decisions. Many had experienced the jungle themselves. They understood that fear of the unseen could outweigh fear of the enemy. But snakes were only the beginning. Because while serpents threatened with venom and speed, something else crept slowly, methodically, beneath the logs and into the shadows, something that attacked not with a single strike, but with persistence. In the next part, we'll examine the creature that turned immobility into torture, and patience into agony. A nightmare you couldn't wake from. If snakes represented sudden death, the next threat represented something far worse. Endurance. According to jungle warfare reports and personal journals recovered after the war, giant centipedes were among the most psychologically devastating creatures snipers encountered. Not because they killed quickly, but because they punished immobility over time. These were not the small insect soldiers remembered from training camps back home. Southeast Asian centipedes could grow longer than a man's hand, with segmented armored bodies, dozens of legs, and venomous pincers designed to subdue prey slowly. They lived where snipers lived. Under rotting logs. Inside hollow trees. Beneath damp leaves. And inside the folds of uniforms soaked with sweat. Unlike snakes, centipedes did not wait. They explored. Snipers reported feeling a light pressure at first. Something brushing against skin. A crawling sensation that intensified minute by minute. Legs moving. Weight shifting. Antennae probing. The instinct was overwhelming: swipe it away. But instinct was forbidden. A single hand movement could reveal a position maintained for days. A reflexive jerk could expose a rifle barrel or cause foliage to move unnaturally. So men endured. Centipedes bit not out of defense, but curiosity. Their venom caused burning pain, swelling, fever, and in some cases temporary paralysis. Medical accounts describe bites that felt like heated metal driven into flesh, pain that radiated outward and lingered for hours. And the worst part was uncertainty. You never knew when it would bite. Or where. Veterans described centipedes crawling into sleeves, under flak jackets, along necklines. One sniper wrote that he felt something coil against his spine, just beneath his collar, and realized moving would end the mission, but not moving might end his life. So he stayed still. The bite came anyway. He did not cry out. He did not flinch. He pressed his face into the dirt and focused on breathing while venom spread through his back. He completed the mission. He was extracted hours later with a fever and muscle spasms that lasted days. Psychologists later identified these experiences as a unique form of combat trauma, pain endured in silence, without the release of action. The mind learned to dissociate. To separate sensation from response. But dissociation has consequences. Many snipers later reported heightened sensitivity to touch. Sleep disturbances. Sudden panic when feeling fabric move against skin. Their bodies remembered what their minds tried to forget. And centipedes were not alone. The jungle had an entire hierarchy of creatures that exploited stillness, fire ants that swarmed exposed flesh, leeches that burrowed painlessly and drank unnoticed, spiders that nested in rifles and packs. Every creature followed the same rule: stillness is opportunity. By the time a sniper had been in position for several hours, he was no longer just observing the jungle. He was part of it. And the jungle was testing him. In the next part, we'll examine how this constant physical invasion began to erode discipline itself, forcing snipers to make impossible choices between mission success and bodily survival. Choices made without words. Without witnesses. Without mercy. By the time a sniper reached the later hours of a mission, the threat was no longer singular. It was cumulative. According to declassified psychological assessments and post-war interviews, prolonged exposure to the jungle environment created a slow erosion of discipline, not through fear of combat, but through relentless physical violation. Pain. Itching. Burning. Biting. Crawling. None of it lethal on its own. All of it unbearable together. Snipers were trained to suppress discomfort. Hunger. Thirst. Muscle cramps. But the jungle introduced something different: uncontrollable stimuli. Creatures that ignored rank, training, and intent. They invaded ears, noses, boots, weapons. They turned the body into contested ground. One army sniper recalled that after nearly 20 hours in position, ants had formed lines across his exposed wrists. He felt them biting, injecting acid, leaving raised welts that throbbed with heat. He calculated each breath, each blink, weighing pain against exposure. Another described leeches attaching inside his boot, draining blood without pain until weakness set in. When he finally shifted position hours later, his sock was soaked red. He had lost so much blood that standing made him dizzy. These were not dramatic moments. They were quiet failures. The most dangerous consequence was not physical injury, it was distraction. As discomfort intensified, focus fractured. Target identification took longer. Range estimation slipped. Hands trembled not from fear, but from exhaustion and venom. The mind began negotiating with itself. Just a small movement. Just one adjustment. No one will notice. This was the real enemy. Commanders later noted that some missed shots and aborted missions could not be explained tactically. The men involved were experienced. Calm under fire. But the jungle had worn them down in ways no opposing force could measure. In rare cases, discipline collapsed completely. There are accounts rarely spoken aloud of snipers deliberately exposing themselves. Standing suddenly. Firing prematurely. Drawing enemy attention simply to end the torment. Not out of cowardice, but desperation. Because there is a point where silence becomes cruelty. Military psychologists later classified these incidents as survival override moments when the nervous system seized control from conscious command. The body chose pain with action over pain without escape. And once that line was crossed, the mission was already lost. By the late stages of the war, training doctrine quietly adapted. Units rotated snipers more frequently.
Observation times were reduced when possible. Insect repellent was prioritized alongside ammunition.
Not officially acknowledged, but understood. The jungle was winning battles without firing a shot. Men returned from these missions altered. Not shattered in the explosive sense, but frayed. Hyper-aware. Permanently tense. Many said they felt safer under enemy fire than lying still in silence, waiting for something to crawl. Because bullets were predictable. The jungle was not. And yet, despite all of this, snipers continued to deploy. Continued to lie motionless. Continued to endure the ecosystem's quiet assault because failure carried consequences far beyond personal suffering. In the final part, we'll confront what this reality ultimately revealed, that the war in Southeast Asia was not merely a conflict between armies, but between human limits and an environment that punished weakness without intention. A war against nature itself. What the jungle ultimately revealed was something no after-action report could fully capture. This war was never fought on a single front. Yes, there were enemy combatants. Yes, there were ambushes, firefights, and casualties recorded in official history. But for American snipers operating deep inside Southeast Asian forests, there was another battlefield, one that never appeared on maps. It was biological. Psychological. Relentless. The jungle did not hate them. It did not fear them. It did not even acknowledge them. And that made it more terrifying than any thinking enemy. Unlike human adversaries, the ecosystem did not respond to deterrence or dominance. You could not intimidate a snake. You could not negotiate with insects. You could not suppress an environment designed over millions of years to exploit weakness, heat, moisture, and stillness. Everything a sniper required to succeed: immobility, patience, silence, was precisely what the jungle punished most severely. This forced a brutal internal conflict. Training demanded absolute control. Survival demanded reaction. Every mission became a negotiation between doctrine and instinct. Between orders and biology. Between remaining invisible and remaining alive. Veterans later reflected that these moments changed how they understood fear. Combat fear was sharp, immediate, almost clean. You could act against it. Jungle fear was slow. Intimate. It crept in through the skin and stayed there. Many said that even decades later, the memory that haunted them was not gunfire, but the sensation of something crawling across their body while they willed themselves not to move. That kind of fear leaves an echo. Psychological studies conducted years after the war found that snipers exposed to prolonged jungle operations showed heightened stress responses compared to those in conventional combat roles. Hypervigilance. Sensory sensitivity. Sleep disorders. The mind never fully trusted stillness again. And yet, there was also pride. Pride in endurance. Pride in restraint. Pride in surviving an environment that offered no mercy. These men operated at the edge of human tolerance. They held positions longer than comfort allowed. Longer than instinct permitted. They absorbed pain, fear, and violation without expression because their mission required it. They did not fight the jungle and win. They endured it. And that endurance came at a cost that cannot be measured in medals or casualty figures. So when we talk about the war in Southeast Asia, it is worth remembering this truth: some battles were fought in absolute silence. No shots fired. No orders spoken. Just a human being lying motionless, negotiating with fear, pain, and nature itself. A nightmare you couldn't wake from. If this story helped you understand the hidden realities of jungle warfare, take a moment to honor those who endured it. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. And remember, not all wars end when the shooting stops.